In Money Watch, the Labor Department released the latest unemployment numbers this morning. So another 840,000 Americans filed for unemployment benefits for the first time last week. While the numbers have stayed under 1 million, these claims are historically high. All of this comes nearly a week after President Trump tested positive for the coronavirus, and another coronavirus stimulus package remains in limbo. So we want to bring in Stacy, Director of Portfolio Strategy at Optimal Capital. Frances, these unemployment numbers are on the decline, but not fast enough, I think. Are you starting to maybe get worried by the fact that this has been dragging on now for 6 or 7 months? I know we hit the numbers every time, and we're seeing kind of like a gradual decline, but still really, really high numbers. And it's difficult to determine now just when this will end.
Yes, I think you're absolutely right. I think the longer that this goes on, the harder it will be to fix, and the more of a domino effect goes into place. And the longer that more people are unemployed, you're going to have people defaulting on their credit cards. You're going to have people defaulting on going into forbearance on their mortgage payments. You're going to have people not able to pay their rent, not able to buy food, going on, record amounts of people, not quite actually a record. It hasn't hit this, the high from the financial crisis, but people are going back onto food stamps after we had a lot of people come off of food stamps. So these consequences are, building in the background, and the more dire that they get, the longer it will take to unwind. And I think that now we've seen a curve flatten in the weekly jobless claims, and I think that this is starting to give us the permanent picture for the consequences and fallout from coronavirus.
So the $300 unemployment benefit has run out in several states. There are no signs of an extension on the horizon. What are some options for those whose benefits have run out?
Yeah, this is a tough one. I'm really sad about our political environment at the moment, because I think that politics is ruling the day, unfortunately, instead of what people need. But I think at this point, we need to go state by state by state by state. And I think the president needs to talk to all the governors, and Congress needs to talk to all the governors and find out statistically how many people are being left behind, how many people are having to move in the middle of this, how many people are starving, how many people. The thing is if there's a hold on the $300 a week, or there's a hold on what was once the $600 a week, because we're talking deficits or what have you, we're still going to have to pay for those people if they're starving and homeless. Let's not kid ourselves, right? That's going to weigh on the system for a really long time. So to mitigate the damages in the short term is going to lessen the long-term damage. And the thing is that until statistically we can really understand how many people are truly suffering with the loss of these benefits, we can't really give a very accurate proposal. And so I think that it's just kind of sad that there's a lot of gridlock in Congress, and there's a lot of gridlock politically right now because of the election, because I think these people there are probably more people suffering than we realize. As far as what can they do, that's a really tough question. But as I usually say, do everything you possibly can to get any job, even if it's a terrible job, it's a job that you hate, even if it's a temporary job, because you can count on yourself more having employment than you can count on the government in this environment.
That's good advice.
So speaking of gridlock, there are still a number of Americans who have applied for unemployment. They're eligible for it, and they still haven't received a check, particularly in some of the states that already had like a really weak unemployment infrastructure. They were just overwhelmed by the number of people applying. In addition to, some of these other programs that are meant to support small businesses, some people haven't seen the money for that as well. So my question to you is, do we even know what happens with that? If you still haven't received your first unemployment check, do you get that money retroactively? Do you get one big check, or do you just sort of like pick up, getting a check as you sort of go along? Is that money still owed to you?
Well, my understanding is this is sort of state by state by state. So, if most states will pay you for 26 weeks. So does the 26 weeks start when you get your first check, or do you retroactively go back, and then do you get the lump sum, but then you don't get any further unemployment benefits if it's beyond 26 weeks. Locally here in Nevada, I've heard a wonderful story. Just kidding. Somebody's been trying to get unemployment since July, and literally in the last week spent 7 hours and 45 minutes on hold to be told that the person who's working from home doesn't have the correct computer system up and cannot check the status right now.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah. And, that's one story. And of course, we read about more, but people are suffering. People are not eating. People are having to move. There's no sort of federal ideology around evictions and rentals and then putting those landlords in some kind of a forbearance program with the lenders. And so, again, I think that our government officials need to meet with the governors and find out what the local laws are and how many people are falling through the cracks. If people, can put off their rent, it shouldn't then be due in a lump sum because that's unlikely to occur. And then those landlords, even if it's commercial, should be able to put those loans under forbearance. And this should be coordinated so that, the people aren't paying their rent and then the landlord's going into default. I mean, it's just really uncoordinated. And the more time that goes by, and the more it's necessary to have these things coordinated, because if you don't have them coordinated, then people and things and loans and landlords are going to fall through the cracks. And the collateral damage is just going to be worse and worse and worse, which means it's going to take more time to come out of it. So it's sad again with the election year, but coordination.
Yeah.
Francis, I think what people don't talk about too is just how expensive it is to fall behind, right? The long-term expense, like perhaps the hit to your credit rating that's going to cost you down the road, even after you get your job back or whatever. If you can't pay utility, the additional money that it'll cost once you get that check to reconnect that utility, a connection fee, a late fee. Like, it's really expensive to run out of money in this country. And so as the longer you wait, the less value that check is going to have just to keep yourself afloat.
No, it's so true. And you bring up one of the most important points about the wealth gap is that poor people pay more for everything. Just for fun, I was on the phone with some credit cards talking about interest rates. And I was asking them where the interest rates are, given the fact that our 10-year yield is very, very low historically. And they were telling me that on the low end, interest rates are around 14.5%, and they've seen up to 30% for people on credit cards. Well, who's qualifying for the 14.5% and who's qualifying for the 30%? So exactly what you say. The food that people are putting on credit cards, not only are food prices going up, but the food people are putting on credit cards, the people who can do the least about it are paying potentially a 30% premium on their food because of their credit ratings. And not to mention the lawsuits that are coming for those who had, their unemployment benefits delayed, and what happened to their credit cards, and what happened to the interest payments, and what happened. The damages are stacking up all over the place. So I do think also lawmakers need to, look at credit cards and look what's happening with those interest rates. Those things are really high. But this is the formula for the wealth gap. And at the debate, this is what I would really love to hear about personally. I get it on people's old voting records and every lie anybody has ever told, and I really get the frustration on that. I wish they would answer the questions. That's, last night there were evasions from both sides. But I really think that what Americans really want to hear is, hey, this wealth gap has been a problem for a really long time. Ray Dalio came out with research at the end of 2017 to say the lower 60%, live in a third world country. The upper 40% live in a first world country, whether you analyze their water quality, whether you analyze their health care, whether you analyze their death rate, whether you analyze their opioid addiction, their life expectancy, their education. It is just on and on and on. So that's how we came into the pandemic. And now the pandemic is uncovering and unmasking all of this. Credit cards shouldn't charge people who are starving to death 30% interest rates, right? This shouldn't be happening because people are really suffering. And as I often say on this show, people are more important than politics.
Indeed.
Amen.
That is absolutely spot on. And you always are, Francis. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.